Hello and welcome to Loving Neverland Exposed. This is the first in a series highlighting some of the influential and controversial members of the MJ fan community. Now, we are a community, but there is a part of this great community that I refer to as the toxic underbelly. And believe me, their time will come, but today I'm focusing on the fan-made documentary Loving Neverland. Now, I have been advised not to put this episode out, but I'm hoping it's going to inspire some adult and responsible discussions. And also, I do want to promote Loving Neverland. And also, my aim for this series is to shed some light on the influential and controversial members of the MJ fan community. So, if you follow this channel, you'll know that I have perhaps an awkward public relationship with Loving Neverland, at least when it was first released. I put out a video called Loving Neverland versus the MJ cast, covering that whole controversy and the critical fallout from the first release of Loving Neverland. I made some statements that some of you didn't agree with, but we discussed our viewpoints like adults and we respected one another. At that time, there was a lot I didn't like about Loving Neverland, and I was quite vocal about that. That video shows that I was in contact with one of the producers, Debs, and for this video I have asked Nan, the other producer, for her contribution. And Nan has been very generous with her time by answering my questions over a period of days and giving me some background information about Loving Neverland. So a big thank you to Nan for that. Now, I did make it clear to Nan that I hadn't watched the revised version, but her questions would complement this video, and I made it clear that I wanted to give Nan the right to reply to some of the things that I'll be discussing here. Now, to bring you up to date, I have actually watched the first 3 parts of the documentary series. I'm a very busy person, and if I waited to have the time to watch all 4 parts, this video would probably end up being released next month, and I wanted to get it out as soon as possible because I have quite a large schedule of content coming up for you. So, the first time we heard about Loving Neverland was on the 1st of August when the trailer hit. It didn't really give much information away, it was mainly a montage of Michael Jackson performing, but it did grab our attention. The documentary itself was released in September, and if I remember correctly, it missed its original release date, I think due to copyright issues with some of the songs that were used. Originally, the documentary ran for 5 hours and 15 minutes, and that was one of the things I and many others criticised. It just felt too long, and we suggested perhaps it could be split into chapters. We also criticised the robotic voiceover, and that has also been addressed. The narration on the new revised videos is top quality. It's an absolutely amazing job. So one of the first things that I asked Nan was to reflect on the controversy of the first release, but Nan didn't want to go there. She quite rightly said that addressing it could invite more people to call out Jamin and herself, and that's not what I want either. So the new and improved Loving Neverland has been split into 4 parts. Now, as you know, I'm notoriously bad at math, but it looks like there's at least 15 minutes of extra content here. I would have preferred it if it was split into 5 parts, but I think 4 is a great compromise and it serves the story really well. So as I said, I've watched the first 3. I will be watching the 4th part when I have time, and I have been keeping notes, so I'm going to refer to those notes now. So straight away, there's a disclaimer that says that all content used under fair use for educational purposes. And I wonder if that's there because some of the discussions that I've had with people is that content was used without people's permission or without being credited. Now, I actually recognised one of my own productions in the first part. It's not from the MJ News Digest channel, it's a secret channel I have from a video with over 20,000 views, which I'm really proud of. And I've spoken to other people who say that their material was also used in Loving Neverland. Now, in Nan and Deb's defence, how are they as fans going to access a great library of Michael Jackson video footage without using YouTube? However, I do feel that permission and credit is always paramount. It is good to see that on this revised version, other documentaries have been credited, and Square One in particular is being highlighted in the first part. My only other issue with that would be that a large part of the information that appears on screen has come from many other people doing their own research, using their own resources, and I believe they should be credited, and perhaps they are in the 4th and final video. So in the first part, I felt that the segment about vitiligo was very well done. I felt they put across some really good points, and there were other moments during the 3 parts I watched that I thought were excellent, and I'll get to those in a moment. But there were some issues, and at least one that I have a big problem with, and I'll get to that in a moment too. One of the issues was that I feel that Loving Neverland wasn't researched enough. What I mean is like doubling down on sources, not just going with one example and presenting it as fact. There was a part early on that suggested that Michael may have suffered from fibromyalgia, and I felt this was unnecessary. It's something that hasn't been proven. I'd like to think that if you're going to produce a documentary, you need to prove the facts. Now, I know that's ironic considering Leaving Neverland couldn't prove shit, but seeing as though Loving Neverland is in response to that steaming pile of doo-doo, it's even more important that the facts are presented as correct. Another example of this is the assertion that Michael breaking down during the Way You Make Me Feel rehearsal for the Dangerous tour was because he had just been told about the Chandler allegations. This has already been proven not to be true, or I believe that it's been proven not to be true. I don't know where the original story came from, and it bothers me that this is in the documentary. But I really enjoyed the song and short film analysis during part 2. I thought that was excellent, and I really wanted to see more of that. You could literally devote a whole documentary series just around that. I also thought the editing during the ghost segment was incredible, so a massive thank you to the editor. And on the DS segment, it just reminded me of what an absolute gangster Michael was. I also really loved the analysis of Stranger in Moscow. I'd love to see more of this kind of thing from the producers. The documentary states that the Black or White short film was banned by White America because Michael was seen to smash racist graffiti. Well, this simply isn't true. The racist graffiti was included after the original ban to bring context to the perceived violence and aggression. And there's also a part during the Remember the Time segment that suggests that Michael financed the short film himself because his friends in Hollywood refused to make a movie that celebrated the greatness of the black community. I did ask Nan for the source of this, but she wasn't unable to offer any. This is something I'd never heard about before. I've done my own research into the creation of the Dangerous short films, and I believe this not to be true, and it seems to be based on this one source here. It's a fan-produced ebook that's available on the Wattpad website. Also, the Little Richard information was also incorrect. Michael did not give back the rights to Little Richard songs to Little Richard. It's a lot more complicated than that, and it's something that I've already covered on this channel. At times, I did feel myself getting quite emotional and angry about what Michael Jackson had to put up with, and I remember when I watched the original 5-hour version, I felt it was pandering more to pain porn. I think that's the expression I used. I don't feel that now. I feel that with it being broken up into different parts, it allows the viewer some breathing space and time to digest everything that was going on. So, on to my main issue with Loving Neverland. Now, I don't like to use this word. I don't like to use the word homophobic. Maybe that's too strong, but there is a current of homophobia during part 3. So it's mentioned that David Geffen had a pool party and sexually propositioned Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson turned him down, and this led to basically career suicide, and apparently just after this, according to Loving Neverland, the first allegations appeared. I have a problem with this. Again, it's something that hasn't been researched. This is a rumour, it's an unfounded rumour. There are many other explanations as to why Michael Jackson and David Geffen fell out. Now, although that wasn't homophobic in itself, unfortunately the next part was. So during the second part of part 3, during the breakdown of the trial, it starts by exploring that Michael Jackson did not have underage pornography, which is a fact. It then goes on to say that the adult material found during the raid was all heterosexual in nature. By saying it was heterosexual in nature, this implies that if any homosexual material was found, that would give weight to the fact that he was a paedophile. Now, this is a homophobic statement. It implies that there's a correlation between being gay and being a paedophile, and that's simply not true. It's a proven fact that this correlation doesn't exist. As a gay man, as a proud gay man myself, I have to call that out, and I find it disappointing to see this kind of thing in a Michael Jackson documentary. Now, I don't for 1 minute think that there was a homophobic agenda here. I feel that comment was based more on ignorance and not being educated on these kinds of issues. And I feel that I've got to know Nan, and I also feel that intolerance is just not a part of who she is. But Michael Jackson does have a massive gay fan base, and I feel that that part of the documentary could alienate a core part of his fan base. And I feel there's a responsibility here as a producer to sort that out. Having said that, I did enjoy the rest of the trial part. I thought it was a good representation of what actually happened during the trial. So, in conclusion, for the 3 parts that I've watched, I still feel it could have done with some editing. It feels like everything the producers could find, they've kind of crammed in there. But good storytelling does come through experience and editing. I do think that Loving Neverland is an amazing achievement. This new revised version, it is a love letter to Michael Jackson. It serves his fans. I can't see it appealing to as many non-MJ fans as Square One did, but perhaps it's not fair to compare it to Square One. Anyway, let's get back to my conversations with Nan. So, I thought that Nan became a Michael Jackson fan after leaving Neverland. I'm sure Taj or someone mentioned this during an MJ cast, but Nan herself said it was actually coincidental. She says that in January of last year, she was watching The Voice and someone was performing Earth Song, and so she started looking into MJ. She said at the time she knew a few of his songs and that she knew that he had turned himself white, but she looked into that and discovered the truth. And then she watched a video on YouTube called Entering Neverland, and that was it. She was a fan for life. Now, I'd never heard of Entering Neverland. I couldn't find it on YouTube. Perhaps it's been restricted. But Nan was able to send me the link, and yeah, I can absolutely see how that would have affected her, and I'll be including that link in the description below. So I then asked her about how and why she created Loving Neverland, and Nan said she always knew that she wanted to create a documentary and she wanted to educate her fellow Indians about Michael Jackson. Now, I'm not saying this is all down to Nan, but recently, while researching news items for MJ News Digest, there's definitely been more pro-MJ articles from the India press, and I'd like to think that perhaps Nan had something to do with that. Nan goes on to say that she knew of Debelina's work. She'd written some pro-Michael Jackson articles, and so they ended up collaborating. And Nan makes it very clear that it's her love for Michael that drove her to produce Loving Neverland. And even though she didn't play a part in it, she felt guilty for what Michael went through, and I can definitely echo that sentiment. I did ask Nan again about the criticism after the first release, and she said that both her and Debs had to learn from this constructive criticism and use it to better themselves. And I feel that's a real credit to both of them. I know that the amount of criticism they received was immense, so to cope with all of that and to come out fighting and make Loving Neverland even better just shows those women are tough cookies, and hats off to them. As Nan herself says, learning is a never-ending process. I also asked Nan, and I ask everyone this, what for you is Michael Jackson's legacy? And Nan highlighted Michael's humanitarian behind-the-scenes work and said that Michael was a true healer, and that really resonated with me. The last question I asked was, how can you play a part in Michael Jackson's legacy? And Nan replied simply with, by honouring his message of love, peace and altruism in everything that we do. So thank you, Nan, and thank you, Debelina, and thank you for Loving Neverland. Yes, it has its issues, but I do consider it to be an important Michael Jackson documentary series. If you haven't watched the new revised version, please do. I'll be leaving the links in the description below. So that's it for the first in my Exposed series. I hope you enjoyed it. And I wonder who the next one could be about. Shall I give you a clue? The MJ cast, I'm coming for you. If you have any stories or opinions that you want to share about the MJ cast, leave them in the comments below, or better yet, email me at mjnewsdigest@gmail.com. Discretion is my middle name.